welcome to this 2024 Biennial Global Symposium, The Natural World, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Law. My name is Gwyneth Boone, and I am currently a BCL JD candidate at McGill University and a researcher with the Center for International Sustainable Development Law, or the CISDL. I will serve as one of your MCs today.
Hello, and welcome to all of our distinguished guests and registrants joining us from all around the world. My name is Tejas Rao, CISDL Senior Manager and a PhD researcher here at the University of Cambridge. Together with Gwyneth, I'm pleased to be your other MC. We are delighted to have you here with us. I'm pleased now to welcome our two moderators for this opening plenary, Ms. Adjoa Appiah and Advocate Susan and Samuel.
Thank you, Tejas. Hello and welcome to this Biennial Global Symposium, The Natural World, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Law. My name is Adjoa Appiah, a PhD candidate at the University of Waterloo and a CISDL researcher, and I'll serve as one of your moderators for this plenary. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to all of our participants. My name is Susan Ann Samuel. I'm a fellowship officer with the CISDL and PhD candidate at the University of Leeds. Together with my co-moderator, we are truly extraordinarily delighted to welcome you to the opening plenary and introduce our two chairs. Professor Mary-Claire Cordonier Segger is a world-leading scholar and jurist in the field of sustainable development law and governance. She holds the chair in sustainable development law and policy at the University of Cambridge, where she is also law fellow and director of studies at Lucy Cavendish College, and a fellow of Lauter Park Center for International Law. As senior director of the Center for International Sustainable Development Law, she has published over 24 books and more than 160 papers in 5 languages, and edits a CUP series on sustainable development treaty implementation. Professor Cordonier Segger holds PhDs of law from both Oxford and Cambridge, and is a laureate of the prestigious His Excellency Judge C.G. Wiedemann III International Justice Award, and was elected Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada in 2002. The next chair is Honorable Elizabeth Maruma Mrema, who's an Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and Deputy Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme. For over 2 decades, Ms. Mrema served in various capacities in the UNEP, including as the Director for the Law Division and the Deputy Director of Ecosystems Division, and has further served as Executive Secretary of several multilateral environment agreements, most recently the Convention on Biological Diversity. In recognition of her inspiring achievements, she is the laureate of the Q International Award and His Excellency Judge C.G. Wiedemann III International Justice Awards. Professor Mary-Claire Cordonier Segger and Honorable Elizabeth Maruma Mrema, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan and Adjoa, and warmest of welcomes to this Biennial Global Symposium, The Natural World, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Law. It's the third in a series, which also includes the global economy, the SDGs and the law in 2022, and human rights, the SDGs and the law in 2020. I understand that nearly 2,000 current and future law and policy leaders from more than 115 countries have registered to join us at some point during the day, and over 21,000 have expressed interest in receiving the videos from this event later on. Thank you so much for your interest and your commitment. We have a rich and fascinating program ahead. After this opening plenary, we'll turn to expert plenaries 1 and 2, featuring new developments in linking human rights and climate change through international law, and in governing trade and investment, natural resources, and the bioeconomy. We shall then enjoy this year's 2024 Honorable Judge C.D. Gonche Memorial Lectures, graciously provided this year by Judge Kathy Ann Brown of Jamaica from the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, and Professor Christina Voigt of Germany and Norway from the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law and the Paris Agreement Committee on Implementation Compliance. We shall also be celebrating the 2024 Weir-Mantry International Justice Award laureates and the winners of the inaugural Global Fellowship to honor His Excellency Justice Weir-Mantry and Mrs. Rosemary Weir-Mantry. Finally, we will return to Expert Plenary 3, focusing on restoring Indigenous rights and health for intergenerational justice, before a concluding conversation with plenary chairs to explore emerging trends and future directions in our field. It's quite an exciting day that awaits us. For now, I am deeply, deeply honored to be able to turn to my co-chair, the Honorable Elizabeth Mrema, in order to give an opening address. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm truly, truly delighted to be with you all. As Professor Maria Claire has just laid out, we are in for an inspiring day. And as all of you on this call certainly know, we certainly need inspiration in the face of unprecedented challenges, from climate change to the loss of biodiversity worldwide to rising inequalities and poverty. Yet, International Sustainable Development Law and the Sustainable Development Goals provide a comprehensive framework to tackle these interconnected issues collectively, making their implementation more critical than ever. As we'll hear today, the Sustainable Development Goals emphasize our shared global responsibility. International law and agreements on sustainable development create a framework for accountability and cooperation among nations, encouraging countries to work together, share resources, and hold each other responsible for commitments made to address our world's most pressing challenges, especially in the framework of the natural world. The Sustainable Development Goals, as we know, are interdependent, with the health of our natural ecosystems directly influencing outcomes in poverty alleviation, health, and economic stability. Our discussion will focus on how legal frameworks can integrate these goals to promote a balanced approach to sustainable development. Protecting our natural environment is not just an isolated goal, but a foundational principle that supports numerous other sustainable development goals. We will examine the various ways in which the legal instruments that can reinforce environmental efforts, ensuring that they contribute to the broader development objectives. Indeed, although we face many challenges, I'm sure our experts today will highlight the multifaceted ways in which we can work together collectively towards a transformative vision for sustainable development that is global in scope, based on values of equity and human rights, and relies on innovative approaches like sustainable financing and the cutting-edge scientific research. This comprehensive approach has the potential to drive systemic change and create opportunities for progress across multiple sectors. It is indeed wonderful to be with every one of you, and I'm certainly sure we will have an excellent symposium ahead of us today.
Thank you so, so much, Elizabeth. It is a privilege to be able to share with you today. And it is now also my pleasure to introduce several distinguished opening speakers to offer their greetings. Dr. Ashfaq Khalfan is Director of Climate Justice at Oxfam America, former Leader Director of Amnesty International, and Chair of the CISDL Board of Governors. Professor Nandini Ramanujam is Professor and Executive Director of the Center for Human Rights and Legal Pluralism at McGill University, also a member of CISDL Board of Governors. Professor Konstantia Koutouki is a full professor and leader of so many programs at the University of Montreal and a CISDL Senior Research Fellow. And also with us today is Dr. Oonagh Fitzgerald, the President of the International Law Association of Canada, former Director of CIGI's International Law Research Program, who served for many years in Canada's Justice Ministry. Please, Dr. Ashfaq, if we could turn to you first.
Thank you. On behalf of the Center for International Sustainable Development Law, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us and for your contributions to the research that we've been doing so far and to the discussions today. The central point of the center is to focus on intersections of law in the environment, social, and economic dimensions. And the law in these areas have been developing in an incredible way. Witness how some of the biggest legal issues touch on questions such as financing in the climate regime, which is the biggest issue at COP29 in Baku, how guaranteeing the rights of indigenous peoples became one of the biggest flashpoints, really, in the most recent biodiversity discussions. We are in a world where silos are no longer tenable and where every international lawyer in our field, well, frankly, has to improve their listening skills. Not very easy. The side effect of these intersections, together with the greater engagement of international bodies, members of whom are going to be here today, from ITLOS, from people engaging in the International Court of Justice, the European Court of Human Rights, Inter-American Court, all of that, I think has the consequence that principle is becoming more elevated to conflict to some extent with pragmatism in international bodies. It's a fascinating time. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And Professor Nandini Ramanujam, we now turn to you.
Thanks so much, Marie-Claire. Greetings from a heavily fortified Paris. I sit 50 meters away from the River Seine, which is getting jazzed up for the opening ceremony of 2024 Olympic Games. I am very delighted to be part of this opening plenary, which is, in my view, another global event bringing together international expertise on the issue of sustainable development law and the natural world. On behalf of the Faculty of Law of McGill University, which I think is the birthplace of CISDL, if I'm right, Marie-Claire, and has sort of trained and formed a generation of students in the area of sustainable development law. I extend my warm welcome to all of you and wish you all the best for a stimulating day of deliberation, discussions on finding legal strategies and pathways for realizing sustainable development goal. So thank you very much for having me here with you, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Nandini, and it's indeed a pleasure. You're completely right. The center was founded in 2002 after a 4-year feasibility study process at McGill and University of Montreal, together with partners worldwide. J'aimerais aussi donner la bienvenue à Madame la professeure Konstantia Koutouki pour l'Université de Montréal.
Merci. Bonjour à tous. Bienvenue à ce qui promet d'être un événement enrichissant et stimulant animé par les experts mondiaux du droit international et de la protection de l'environnement. Je voudrais, dans ces remarques de bienvenue, rappeler à chacun l'importance de tous les experts dans la résolution des problèmes mondiaux. Des experts tels que les nations autochtones, des communautés locales et la multitude des porteurs de savoir, donc le laboratoire et la terre elle-même. These supposed ordinary, regular people are in fact extraordinary, and we owe much of our knowledge and capacity to fix global problems to the tenacity and persistence of these indigenous and local community members. Thank you so much. Merci.
Merci beaucoup aussi. I'll turn directly to Dr. Oonagh from the ILA.
Thank you very much, Marie-Claire and Elizabeth. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'd like to send you greetings from the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples in the Outaouais, the Ottawa region of what is now called Canada. I'm very excited to be part of this event. The International Law Association of Canada is pleased to be a co-sponsor with so many other distinguished organizations. The topic is so important, the relationship between the natural world, sustainable development, and international law. The International Law Association of Canada has been involved in a number of programs recently, and they touch on similar topics. So these are really the topics of the day. How do we ensure Indigenous people participate fully in society? Issues of Indigenous trade. How do we control the transnational corporation in its exploitation of people and environment? And other issues related to the environment, such as plastic pollution. How do we come up with a new treaty for addressing plastic pollution? So, and finally, I'd just like to mention that in September, we'll have an event where we talk to a former advisor to Global Affairs Canada. And the idea there is thinking about how do we as individuals help advise governments to move forward in a way that is sustainable, and how do we help to shape international law for the natural world to get a better integration of issues of human rights, equality, and sustainability. So with these words, I just like to encourage everyone to really be thinking about our role, our responsibilities as international lawyers to improve international law and to make it a tool for a better world. And this comes to some very fundamental ideas like the natural world. And I would add the idea of peace, the need for us to live in harmony together, to work together towards a just and sustainable society. So best of luck for a wonderful day today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oonagh. And again, thanks to all of you and your institutions for helping in so many ways to co-host and make this event possible. I'd like to also thank especially the renowned experts from the United Nations Environment Programme, from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, from across the ILA, from the International Intertribal Trade Investment Organization and the Sixties Healing Foundation, also the Net Zero Lawyers Alliance, the McGill Journal of Sustainable Development Law, the Cambridge International Law Journal, and Canada's Sustainable Development Solutions Network, among others, and among all of the universities that have come together to make this event a success. We are truly grateful that you're here with us throughout the coming day, and we gratefully especially appreciate those who have greeted everyone on behalf of the wide links of partners. I'm now going to turn to our opening speakers, and I understand that we are joined by two of them today, and one has been delayed and will be joining us later in one of the substantive plenaries. So I will be very honored to introduce Professor Payam Akhavan, who's a Senior Fellow and Human Rights Chair at Massey College, University of Toronto, Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, I recall that ceremony, and a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague, as well as Special Advisor to the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. He serves as counsel to the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law in the historic advisory opinion proceedings before the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea and the International Court of Justice, and is of course also a prominent advocate for human rights around the globe, and has kindly today agreed to provide us with a few key insights from the world of international courts and tribunals, tempting you especially, I suspect, to join us for the next plenary one on climate change and human rights. And I'll introduce our second opening speaker, who will also be joining us later today, and so he will be very, very brief today. And this is, of course, Advocate Wayne Garnons-Williams, the founding president of the International Intertribal Trade and Investment Organization, IITIO, who has extensive experience and expertise in both corporate and government sectors, focusing on promoting Indigenous trade and investment opportunities. As CEO of the National 60s Healing Foundation of Canada, a nonprofit registered charity, and previous chair of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indians National Appeal Tribunal, he also served as leading negotiator of the Indigenous Peoples Economic Trade and Cooperation Arrangement, which has some truly innovative and indeed groundbreaking provisions in respect to the natural world and sustainable development. I am certain he will be encouraging you to join us for Plenary 3 on Indigenous rights, health, and intergenerational justice. So I will turn first to Professor Payam Akhavan. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Chers collègues, chers amis, bonjour. Greetings to all of you who have joined us from across the world. I'm honored by this invitation to make some brief remarks about the role of international courts and tribunals in promoting respect for the natural world. It is notable that in the tradition of the European Enlightenment, the idea of natural law was primarily a philosophical proposition, whereas today, in the shadow of catastrophic climate change, natural law is taking on an entirely different meaning. Whereas once we were told that disenchantment is the price of rationalistic modern progress, we are now approaching the inescapable conclusion, as many indigenous and other spiritual traditions have reminded us for generations, that we are not at the center of the world, but that we are part of an interdependent, indivisible whole, that we are an insignificant speck in an infinite universe, that life is possible on Earth because of a miraculous balance in nature without which we would become extinct. When it comes to the catastrophic consequences of climate change, small island states are the canary in the coal mine, their fate a warning to the rest of humankind of what awaits us if we continue along the current path. The scientific consensus reflected in the work of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is that we must keep temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by the year 2100 in order to prevent catastrophic harm. The 1992 UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the 2015 Paris Agreement were adopted as models of global governance to address the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions and adaptation to global warming. But based on the current nationally determined contributions, the world is set to achieve almost 3 degrees Celsius by the year 2100, almost twice what is required to avert catastrophic consequences. For small island nations whose very existence is threatened by rising sea levels and extreme weather events, the frustration with lack of progress in the COP process led in 2021 to a new front in the struggle for climate justice, a turn towards international courts and tribunals. At COP26 in Glasgow, the prime ministers of Antigua and Barbuda and Tuvalu established the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law. The agreement was opened for signature by other small island nations, and today it has 9 members divided between the Caribbean and the Pacific. In December 2022, the Commission requested the first ever advisory opinion from the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, based in Hamburg, Germany, which was established under the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, seeking clarification of the obligation of states to preserve and protect the marine environment. The ocean, of course, is the biggest carbon sink in the world, absorbing some 93% of excess heat, and it regulates the global climate system through the complex conveyor belt that carries warm water from the tropics to the poles and cold water from the poles to the tropics. At around the same time, one of the Commission's members, Vanuatu, led a campaign for the UN General Assembly to request an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice, based in The Hague, on the wider obligations of states, including in respect of human rights. The point was to make clear that what small island states have been demanding for 30 years without success, namely radical mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions and loss and damages for harm caused by the major polluters, is already part of binding international law. For countries like Tuvalu, population 11,000, this is an existential question. If the major polluters fail to comply with their obligations and failing significant adaptation measures, Tuvalu will become uninhabitable in the coming generation. Quite simply, it will go under the sea. With this in mind, this David and Goliath contest began with many dismissing the capacity of these smallest of nations to lead such an effort, which in their view was destined to fail. Yet, with unity and purpose, the Commission succeeded in obtaining on 21 May 2024 an historic and unanimous advisory opinion from the Law of the Sea Tribunal, spelling out the obligations of states to do what is necessary to avert catastrophic harm, irrespective of the scheme under the Paris Agreement. Meanwhile, Vanuatu and its climate-vulnerable allies succeeded on 29 March 2023 in the adoption by consensus of a General Assembly resolution requesting an opinion from the World Court, and the hearing has been scheduled for December of this year, with an opinion anticipated in 2025. Yet another initiative is the Climate Change Advisory Opinion proceedings before the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. This is a remarkable display of planetary politics, of global leadership by the smallest of nations, reminding us that what is happening to them will happen to the rest of us unless there is unified, immediate, and concerted action to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. I had the honor of opening the case for the Commission before the Law of the Sea Tribunal in Hamburg, and it was exceptional to recite the scientific evidence before the 21 distinguished judges of the tribunal, one of whom you will hear from today. I mentioned how the first forms of life emerged from the ocean some 3.5 billion years ago, how it took hundreds of millions of years after that for enough oxygen to build up in the atmosphere to make life possible, and how today, for the first time in history, anthropogenic activity imperils our species, threatens the collapse of civilization. A stark reminder, as the Attorney General of Vanuatu said in his opening statement, that if we respect nature, nature will respect us. Meanwhile, in the realm of investor-state arbitration too, there is a lively debate emerging about the need to interpret investment treaties in light of the obligations of states on climate change, and not to impede states from adopting the necessary measures without facing billions of dollars in compensation claims. Clearly, this issue of fundamental importance for the future of humankind is making its presence felt, and it remains to be seen whether and how the emergence of this new jurisprudence, this call to climate justice based on international law, will have a bearing on how we grapple with climate change in the coming years. At the least, it shows that we should not underestimate the resilience of those, like small island nations, who may be on the margins of power realities in the global political order, but whose voice is being heard far and wide. I have no doubt that history will vindicate their ambition, not least because the natural world is on their side. I thank the organizers once again for giving me the honor of sharing these brief remarks, and I thank all of you for participating from across the world, for your concern and engagement for the future of humankind. I close with the words of the legendary medieval poet Saadi of Shiraz, from the land of my Iranian ancestors, who reminds us that in nature, in our essence, we are all inextricably interdependent, and that above all, it is empathy for those who suffer and the struggle for justice that defines what it means to be human. His words are, human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Payam, for those deep and meaningful words to help to open this global symposium. You've reached deep into our souls to explain the links between sustainability, a commitment to global justice, and the sustainable approach that we need to be able to protect, cherish, restore the natural world, and it's deeply, deeply appreciated. I'm now going to turn to Advocate Wayne Garnons-Williams, who is also one of our opening speakers today.
Thank you. Elders, honorable judges, professors, thought leaders, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Wayne Garnons-Williams. I'm Indigenous. I'm a Plains Cree from Canada, Treaty Number 3 Moosomin First Nation, and I have the honor to promote the last panel of the day, entitled Restoring Indigenous Rights and Health for International Justice. Sustainable Development Goals 3 and 16, and the rest of the SDGs. Now, I'm going to do at this panel a bit of an address concerning a crossover between treaties, environmental stewardship, and economic sustainable development. So come to our last panel and learn about IPECTA, the Indigenous Peoples Economic Trade and Cooperation Arrangement, and learn how Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples are being applied in international treaty law today. And at our panel, there'll be questions that our august list of world-class thought leaders that are panelists will be discussing the following questions. What principles and laws can secure Indigenous rights, including health and education worldwide? What can international law contribute to securing the water, food, energy nexus for higher vulnerable countries and communities? And finally, what is the reconciled pressing needs, how to reconcile pressing needs of communities today with intergenerational sustainability and justice over the long term? So I invite you to come to our last panel because it's going to be really interesting and we're going to learn a lot and we're going to take a journey with you. So come, enjoy, and learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I think with that kind of accolade, not only do you help to open this symposium, but you interest all participants who are here with us online in ensuring that they don't miss a single minute of it, especially that very, very interesting plenary that we will be concluding with. So we deeply appreciate, of course, your engagement and your insights and the work that you have done on the IPECTA and other treaty negotiations. And I'm definitely going to have to come to that next panel. I'm going to now pass the floor to the Honorable Elizabeth Mrema, who is going to introduce our keynote speaker for this opening.
Indeed. Let me begin first by thanking you all for those lovely remarks that have framed our coming conversation very well. And now I would like to introduce our opening plenary keynote speaker. And this is no one else but Dr. Graciela Aguirre, who is our current Director General of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, who has assumed that role in that office, IUCN, leading that office since October last year. But we also know she did not join IUCN October last year. She has been with the organization for several years. With over 30 years of experience in environmental law and policy, particularly in Latin America, Graciela has been a pivotal figure in advancing biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. She has served as IUCN Acting Director General, as well as the Regional Director for Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. She has also contributed to global initiatives, which include the United Nations Environment Program on Access to Genetic Resources, and she has taught a number of higher education institutes, including the University of Costa Rica and the Metropolitan Autonomous University of Mexico. Dr. Graciela Aguirre, very much welcome and looking forward to listen to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Elizabeth, for those kind words. And thank you, Marie-Claire Cordonier, for your kind invitation to this important symposium. It is really an honor for me to be part of today's discussions. So as Elizabeth kindly mentioned, I am the Director General of IUCN. but also my background is a lawyer. And so the topics that we will discuss today will bring together law and nature conservation. And those are very close to my heart, but also very close to what we do in IUCN. The protection of the natural world and the law are more deeply connected than they might appear on the surface. And we are all here today at this important event because we know that our planet is facing an environmental crisis. The challenges are deep, and they are largely due to the impact of pollution, climate change, and biodiversity loss. But I am sure that we all know this. Therefore, to conserve the natural world and to protect the processes that give us clear air, water, food, and health, we must address pollution, we must address the climate change, and we must address biodiversity together and not in separate boxes. I think that many of us are saying this, that we cannot continue speaking of these triple crises in different boxes and with different people. So we have, I will say that we have political action that is, heading in the right direction, that we have also concrete actions coming from diverse sectors, private sector, agricultural sector, that can lead the way. And of course, we have very important communities on the ground that are making efforts to address these challenges. And as also other speakers mentioned before me, I need to mention the importance of indigenous peoples and the relevance of the wisdom and traditional knowledge that many of us need to embrace and better understand. So we can see progress, and we need to believe that change is possible. I like very much what my colleague and friend Elizabeth mentioned in her remarks, that she hoped that some of us will also mention the positive side. So I am a positive, and I think that we are making progress and that the change is possible. However, what is going on now is that things are moving far too slow. And we really need to put some traction into the actions that are happening around us, because we do have good examples. We do have indigenous peoples on our side. We do have much political willingness. I mean, one cannot say 100%, but I am sure that we have a lot of political willingness, because this is what we are talking is not less than our own well-being as humans. So on this journey, where we can no longer afford to wait, we must use all tools at our disposal. And one of them, and very important, is law. After all, law provides the framework that governs our societies and instructs us on how we have to behave and act. Give us the lines on how we need to live, in society. And this is not just for countries, but we have these principles and these laws all around us for our day-to-day lives. So law has far-reaching implications that affect agricultural systems, international trade, and the livelihoods of millions of people all around the world. So for the many lawyers that are joining this symposium, yes, we as lawyers, we do have a lot of responsibility in our hands to do our job the best way we can. That is why the construction of a strong legal foundation will help us to ensure effective collaboration and cooperation, and as a result, allow us to meaningfully implement agreements like the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So, sometimes people ask me if, about Gretel, the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is, comes from many experts and governments and the voices of many people. Yes, indeed. But I am sure, and Elizabeth can correct me if this is not right, that many lawyers were also involved in putting this together, because we need to make these agreements clear we need to achieve for everybody to understand what is in the text. And that is part in many instances of the job of the lawyers. So about all, I have to say that law will allow us to protect and fulfill human rights, to make sure that access to justice is available to even the most marginalized of people. And this is very important also in relation to what other speakers said before me, that yes, equity, justice, and support the most needed people is essential in this journey that we have in saving, to save the planet. So at IUCN, we are a union of over 1,400 members and 17 experts all around the world. We are committed to strengthening the legal foundations of international conventions and agreements, but we are also really committed to work with the governments, with the communities, and with indigenous people. The World Commission on Environmental Law, IUCN's legal brain, has been at the forefront of some of the most exciting things IUCN is doing. The Commission works to enhance the development and strengthen the implementation of environmental law in many countries around this planet. And this is done, for instance, through establishing best practices and strategies for effective compliance and enforcement. It promotes the environmental rule of law globally, particularly in countries that seek to improve their laws and governance systems. And it aims to strengthen the capacity of governments, the judiciary, prosecutors, law schools, and other stakeholders as they develop and implement environmental law. There are many clear examples of international law intersecting with nature conservation. For instance, IUCN, working with this commission, has formally provided legal advice on the obligations of the states when it comes to climate change and responses to the climate change emergency within the framework of international human rights law. It is only through further development in environmental law that we can implement so many frameworks, such as the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, the High Seas Biodiversity Treaty, and of course, the Biodiversity Plan. I have to say also here to stop to say that, laws do not come just from lawyers. And of course, we need to work with so many sectors and so many people to have the right laws, the laws that will respond to the needs of society today, the laws that will think about the future, the laws that will embrace the people that are more in need. Indeed, what cannot overemphasize the importance of the biodiversity plan, or how we know it as the Kunming biodiversity plan, which we all previously knew, with the whole entitled title of Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework. This ambitious framework is necessary to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and to reverse the degradation that is so painfully affecting people and nature. With its visionary pathway and ambitious targets, it has set a guiding star for humanity to scale up conservation action like never before. Since it was adopted almost 2 years ago, we have seen positive signs. But of course, we have to do more, and we have to move quickly. We cannot wait until 2030 to say that we didn't achieve what it was set on this agreement. For instance, in 2023 saw the passage of the High Seas Biodiversity Treaty, which was formally adopted in June after almost 2 decades of negotiations. The treaty is expected to contribute significantly to achieving key targets on the biodiversity plan, including protecting 30% of the ocean. Progress was also made in negotiating 2 critical instruments against pollution. The plastic treaty, that is under discussion at the moment, as well as the science and policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution. At IUCN, we are heartened that by this progress, but also see that much remains to be done. For example, I have to say that we all need to keep pushing for the plastics treaty to be in place, to be implemented, and for people to embrace it, because none of us would like to go to the ocean and swim and, between the plastic bottles. It's not, it's something, I have in my image. I come from Costa Rica, and I remember going to the beach, playing with shells in beautiful beaches. And lately I have seen so much plastic in our own beaches that it is really terrible. And it really goes to my heart, and I believe it to the heart of many. So we need to advance. To this end, we continue, IUCN continue to offer conservation tools and knowledge, such as the development of appropriate laws to support parties and key stakeholders as they implement this biodiversity plan. The future holds many challenges, but as I started saying, I'm very optimistic. We humans, we are capable of doing the worst, but we are also very capable to wake up and to do the best for all of us. And I am truly optimistic that we will wake up and we will do the best for our planet, to have together, the type of life that we all deserve, and not only we, but the ones that are to come. Now that almost 2 years have passed since the biodiversity plan has been adopted, and now that we are only 6 years from when we must achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, all stakeholders must walk the talk, beyond just voicing their goodwill. As you might imagine, I have been in many places where I give speeches, but I just think that it's time to walk the talk and show concrete actions that are coming from many places. To turn our goodwill into action, we need to strongly consider binding commitments across all sectors and communities, and we need to implement systems of check and balances to increase accountability and definitely where progress is lacking, and to reward good progress. So let me just finish saying that colleagues, friends, partners, the ones who are connected to this symposium, I do not really believe in a nature conservation community, because if you have a stake in the future of our planet, our one and only home, you are already part of the nature conservation community by definition. This is true regardless of whether you are a lawyer, biologist, doctor, president, or a farmer. It is our duty, all of us, to work together with all sectors before it's too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And with that inspiring address and our very, very warmest of greetings to all of the wonderful people from so many different countries that have been conveying their regards on the Q&A, we will conclude this plenary right away and this opening in order to move forward with our first substantive plenary, which will be beginning in just 1 minute, just a little bit late on the second Zoom link. I'd like to express my warmest of thanks to our hosts, our speakers, and our brilliant keynote. Gressa, it is always an inspiration to hear you. And of course, we take up the challenge that you've given us. And I'd like to especially thank my distinguished co-chair, with whom it is truly an honor and pleasure to serve, Elizabeth. Our first Global Experts Plenary on Climate Change and Human Rights will begin in just 1 minute online, running a little bit late at 2:55. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. And Elizabeth and I will be back to chair the Weir Mantry International Justice Awards and Golden Shea Lectures right after a very brief lunch break as well. We will see you soon.